What's going on, guys? You're watching the 4-Wheel Kid channel, and I got this 96 Ford E-350 club wagon, and I'm doing a camper conversion on it, but I had it emissions test it, and it passed no problem whatsoever. The numbers actually looked really good, so it's definitely got a healthy engine. But on my way home from work, I was at a stoplight next to a truck, and I was like, I'm gonna see what this thing can do. So I just floored it, and I took off from the stoplight, and the check engine light came on. But that's good, because I want to work all the problems out of this van, and I like diagnosing stuff. It's actually kind of fun. It's like a puzzle. But let's go ahead and see what the problem is. So I got my little Android-based launch scan tool, and I had one on my phone, but I couldn't read a freeze frame data, so I just wanted to get, a decent real one. And this also reads ABS and transmission issues as well. So this is actually the first year they put OBD2 in this thing. So the diagnostic connector is right here underneath the steering wheel. You just take that cover off, plug that guy in. It's on, and I'm gonna go ahead and just do OBD2. Go ahead and turn key on, engine off, and then let's do no and have it scan all the OBD2 protocols. Got the one that matches. You just click on that. We can see the check engine light is on. Click OK. We'll read the fault code. Let's just click on Ford. It's a P0171 system to lean bank 1 and a P0174 system to lean bank 2. Engine is not getting enough fuel, and we can rule out an O2 sensor because it's happening to both of them, and we could probably rule out at least just one injector because it wouldn't affect both banks like that. So this problem could be a vacuum leak or an intake leak, and it could be a fuel issue. But let's go ahead and go back. Let's take a look at our freeze frame data. So this definitely matches what I was doing when I got the check engine light. The calculated load value is 86%, so it's definitely under some pretty heavy load there. RPM is 2211. We take a look down here at our long-term fuel trims, and obviously it's affecting both banks, almost similar. One's a little off, but it's not too much. And it's definitely trying to add a lot of fuel in there. It's being starved of fuel. So just by looking at this data, we can pretty much rule out an intake or a vacuum leak because the load value in the RPM is a lot higher than idle. Usually with a vacuum leak, you'll have high positive fuel trims, but it'll be at idle when it happens. And usually when you give it gas higher than idle, the fuel trims will usually improve because the vacuum or intake leak becomes less significant. So at this point, it's probably going to be a fueling issue or a mass airflow issue. And I'm starting to lean towards a fuel pump because this vehicle was sitting for about a year and a half. And when I prime the pump, listen to what it sounds like. It might just be me, or maybe it's a Ford thing, but that doesn't sound exactly normal for a fuel pump. But just in case, let's go ahead and do some more Diag, see if we can actually prove it. As you can tell, it has a little bit of a long crank time. Maybe that's normal, I don't know. And also, we have enough fuel in there. It's not like it's running out or anything. It's a little under a quarter, which is good because if we have to drop the fuel tank, I want it to have as little fuel as possible. All right, now that it's running, let's go ahead and read some live data. Gonna want the calculated load value, engine RPM, and we'll just look at the long-term fuel trims for both banks. And I guess we can put the fuel system status on there too, so we know if it's in closed loop or not. It's still in open loop, so we gotta wait a little longer until it's ready to go. Alright, that didn't take too long. We're already in closed loop, it looks like. So we actually got a little bit of a negative fuel trim right now. I'm just gonna give it a little bit of snap throttle and see what my fuel trims do. Whoa, see that? Went up pretty high. Definitely appears to be starving for fuel. Let's go ahead and combine load, RPM, and both fuel trims for bank 1 and bank 2. Let's go ahead and just drive it up the street a little bit. I'll let you guys watch the screen while I drive and see what happens. I'm gonna drive this thing for a little bit. All right, I'm gonna give it some gas. Okay, so I'll just go through this chart really quick, and as you can see, long-term fuel trim bank 1 is a little bit lighter blue. It's almost the same blue as calculated load value, but it's almost just a little bit lighter or saturated. I wish they would have used different colors. And the yellow is actually the long-term fuel trim bank 2, and it's actually a little hard to read just based on the color. Again, I wish they would have used a different color. But the engine RPM is like kind of a purple color. And we'll just check out the part where we floored it, and you can see where the RPM went up to about 3,000. And at first glance, it looks like the bank 1 and bank 2 long-term fuel trims are actually different. However, they are not, because with this graph, it's kind of weird because the scales on the side will just kind of change to like fit everything in there, and it's kind of random when it'll change. So you really have to look at the scale on the side because it's color coded as well. But if we look at the light blue, which is a long-term fuel trim bank 1, we can see it went above 20 right there on the side. And we can see the yellow, which is bank 2 long-term fuel trim, is pretty much doing the same exact thing. And a positive 20 long-term fuel trim under load is no good whatsoever. It pretty much means it's trying to add 20% more fuel. So obviously it's just not getting enough fuel for some reason. But I'll go ahead and do another poll so you guys can kind of see for yourselves. It's definitely not getting enough fuel just based on those graphs. Anyways, guys, I think this van earned a fuel pressure test, so I'm going to go ahead and take off the doghouse. If you want to know how to do that, I made a separate video on it, but let's go ahead and get it off there. All right, there we go. Ready to do a fuel pressure test. I got a master set on Amazon, and one of those should probably work. Fortunately, Ford did put a fuel pressure tester port on the fuel rail. It's really annoying when manufacturers don't put these on here, and it's right behind this little wiring harness. You can kind of see the bottom of it right there, and there's a little cap, and interestingly enough, this cap wasn't on there very well. It's kind of crooked, and I actually found another one of these caps down there, so that's kind of interesting. Also, when you're working on especially the fuel system, but usually anything on a car, it's always a good idea to wear safety glasses because you never know what might happen. And I care about my eyesight, some people don't, but only you are responsible for your own safety. It turns out that the Ford fuel pressure tester threads are the exact same as a tire Schrader valve, so that's pretty handy. This is the right one. Throw it on here. It also has a 90-degree adapter. But let's go ahead and try to prime the pump and see what happens. Go ahead and try to prime it again. It looks like we're about at 34 psi. The spec for key on, engine off on the 7.5 or 460 engine is 35 to 45 psi. Technically, that's slightly below. Yeah, we're like right at 34. We can't quite get to the spec. Let's go ahead and start this thing up. So it's sitting right at about 28 psi on idle, and the spec is 28 to 45. So we're right at the minimum while it's running. And it does make sense that it would be a bit lower because of the fuel pressure regulator is helping to keep the pressure down a little bit while it's idling. All right, next let's go ahead and give it a little bit of snap throttle. On a snap throttle, it does go up to about 34, and then it goes down to 26, which is below the spec. All right, guys, let's go for a little drive up the road, and you guys watch the fuel pressure. Right here, guys, I think we can see the problem. It is technically within spec, but as we're accelerating pretty hard, you can actually see the fuel pressure start to drop down a little bit. And while we're under load like that, there shouldn't be any vacuum helping the fuel pressure regulator open. Alright guys, next I'm going to go ahead and start it up and then disconnect the vacuum line on the fuel pressure regulator. And the fuel pressure should definitely go up when I do that. But what I should have done is when I disconnected the vacuum line, I should have plugged it with something and then went for another drive watching the fuel pressure. That way 100% the vacuum is not going to be affecting the regulator, so it's all like fuel pump at that point if it starts to drop. It's definitely a feeling issue. It could be like a plugged filter or the regulator is getting a little bit weak or something along those lines. Also, at first I started to think it was not a fuel pressure issue. And I start to look at something else, as you'll see here in just a moment. But later on, I do come back and take a better look at the footage and, you know, see that drop in pressure. The fuel pressure wasn't as bad as I would have thought. I kind of just jumped to the fuel pressure issue based on that sound that the fuel pump is making, but I don't know, maybe it's normal. It is slightly below the spec for key on, engine off, and while it's idling, it's right there at the engine running minimum spec, about 28 psi. The next thing we probably want to look at is the mass airflow sensor. Okay, so back to the scan tool, and I wasn't actually able to find the specific mass airflow voltage on the OBD2 section, but if I went into the Ford OEM specific section and typed in the vehicle and everything and entered the PCM, I'm able to find it. The OBD2 just has how much, like, I think it's like grams a second is flowing, but I just want to see voltage. And key on, engine off, and 0.01 volts, which is actually what you want to see as far as the mass airflow sensor goes. Usually if there's something really goofy with the mass airflow sensor, it'll be a lot higher than that. However, I mean, it could still be a dirty mass airflow sensor, but this is a good place to check. If you see like 0.13 or something volts, then you know there's something goofy going on with the mass airflow. But I guess we'll just go ahead and start it up real quick. And we're at about 1.6. Let's go ahead and rev it up a little bit. So guys, as far as I could tell, the voltage on the mass airflow sensor looked pretty normal as far as I could tell, but I want to go ahead and clean it. This is a 4-wire sensor, so it doesn't have the integrated temp sensor. Before I remove anything, I'm just gonna kind of clean it up a little bit, prevent any dirt from falling in. Disconnect the connector. And we'll just kind of look, make sure there's no corrosion or anything. This one looks pretty good. So it's just 2 T20 safety torques. Comes right out. Let's go ahead and take this on the bench and give it a look. That side looks okay, but the air comes in from the other side. And look how dirty that thing is. Pretty darn dirty. I picked up some mass airflow sensor cleaner. I'm just gonna pull this little O-ring off of here. I just don't know if the cleaner is gonna cause it to expand or something like that. You don't want to use any compressed air or Q-tips or anything. Just a nice, good spray. And take a look at the difference that made. That dirt was as thick as the wire, just sitting on there. Stick this back in carefully. And start it up. So now that we changed something, I went ahead and pulled up the short-term fuel trims as well, and those are indicated by the yellow and the light blue, and then the long terms are the purple and the dark blue this time. And if we look right here, when we were accelerating pretty hard, we can see that we were getting pretty close still to positive 20 long-term fuel trims. And then if we look down here at the short-term fuel trims, it's about negative 5. And to get the actual fuel trim, you just add them together. So we're at about positive 15. And it's hard to say for certain because I don't have the calculated load value pulled up. But if we look back at the freeze frame data, we can see we have a total fuel trim of about positive 20 on bank 1. And right now we have about positive 15. Again, I don't know if the calculated loads are exactly matching, but it is possible that cleaning that mass airflow sensor did help a little bit. Because the thing that happens when the hot wire gets dirty like that, it basically insulates it. So the cold air rushing past it doesn't cool it off as fast. So it kind of tricks the computer into thinking there's not as much air coming into the engine. So it adds less fuel. And then that's picked up by the oxygen sensors. And that would give us a higher positive fuel trim. Also, I noticed over here, kind of when we were coasting or, just cruising along, the short-term fuel trims are going pretty high positive, while the long terms are down a little bit in the negatives, and I'm not exactly sure why this is, but it seems like it's trying to relearn something. I don't really go into it in this video because it's kind of a separate problem, but I had the air intake temperature sensor data up, and it would intermittently just conk out, just like had an open circuit or something in there. I checked the wiring, I didn't find any issues with that, so it might be the sensor itself, but it was intermittent. So I'm almost wondering if that happened when the air intake temp sensor was conking out. I'm not exactly sure, but in this video I'm not as worried about coasting and going slow. The main problem is the high positive fuel trims under heavy load. Well guys, I was able to get some sleep, and if you're ever stuck on something, it's always good to sleep on it and get a fresh start in the morning. But obviously cleaning the mass airflow sensor didn't really fix it. That thing was pretty dirty though, so I bet it's gonna run better with that clean. I'm kind of glad I did find that and clean it up. And now I'm kind of going back to the fuel pressure, and I did talk with a guy who's a lot more familiar with these Ford engines. I don't have a lot of experience on Fords, and I'm kind of learning as I go. All cars are a little different and they have their problems. And he was saying you should get 38 to 40 PSI without it dropping at all on the acceleration run. And I was just kind of going off the specs on all data, and with the engine running, it's 28 to 45 PSI, and it's not exactly specific of what it should be without vacuum to the regulator. But if we look back when I disconnected the regulator, it should be going full pressure, and it was only 36 PSI. And the guy who knows a lot more about the Fords, was saying it should be 38 to 40. And then on the acceleration run with the regulator connected, and it should be really no vacuum on an acceleration run. So it was going about 34, and it looked like it dropped just a little bit, and it's about 4 to 6 PSI lower than it really should be. So I'm thinking the fuel pressure is actually what's causing the lean condition, because I think it has enough pressure to run okay, but it's really trying to open those injectors a lot longer to get the right amount of fuel in there. And kind of like on the line where it'll probably turn the check engine light on sometimes, but not all the time. Check engine light didn't come on last night when I was driving it, but that doesn't mean there's still an issue. Probably about time for a fuel pump, and honestly I wouldn't really feel comfortable driving this thing very far at all without a new fuel pump anyways. So what I'm gonna do is go ahead and drop the fuel tank and replace the pump. I got a whole new Delphi assembly, You know, it comes with the level sensor and everything, and it actually comes with a new harness that you have to splice in. I guess there's an updated part. And I also have a Wix filter that I'm going to replace also, because I mean, why would you replace the fuel pump without a filter? And I have a new Delphi regulator, but I'm going to try just replacing the pump and filter and just to see what changed, because I kind of want to figure out what part was actually bad. But before I replace the pump and filter, I'm also going to go ahead and check my voltage drops on the ground and positive for the fuel pump. We are now all set up for a voltage drop test on the positive side of the fuel pump. So it's going from there on the positive side of the battery terminal all the way through the meter. And I have a back probe that I've already tested to make sure. Right there you go. It's making contact. And the positive wire for the fuel pump is pink with a black stripe. And as you can see, we're at about battery voltage, which is pretty good. Well, let's go ahead and start it up, and that'll tell us our voltage drop. All right, and it's running. And we do have 0.6 volts. All right, now we're set up for a ground circuit voltage drop. So from the ground post all the way to a back probe on the big fat black ground wire. Go ahead and start it up. And we are pretty low at only 65 millivolts. So guys, 65 millivolts seems really low, which is good. However, I did find out later that there was an aftermarket pump on this van, and actually the ground for the pump itself and the ground for the sending unit is actually swapped, which is not so good because the pump ground is a lot thicker wire compared to the sender ground, which is a lot smaller gauge wire. So we're actually probably getting a pretty excessive drop on the ground side. And the interesting thing is that the new Delphi pump, if we just plugged it in, it's basically wired the same where those grounds are swapped. So I don't know if it has something to do with the year of this van being like a 96. Maybe they just changed the wiring around and then the aftermarket pumps are supposed to match like a different vehicle. I have no idea, but it really pays off to really do your homework and check the wiring diagrams and make sure that the wiring is correct, even with aftermarket parts, instead of just plugging them in. And this may actually have something to do with the pump not being able to build pressure. However, I didn't really realize this until I started dropping the fuel tank. So I ended up just replacing the pump, the filter, and fixing the wiring. But I'm almost wondering if this van had a intermittent check engine light with that lean condition, and potentially the mechanics were not able to figure out the actual problem and the check engine light kept coming on. I mean, remember that cap on the fuel rail pressure test port? It was barely on there, and then there was another cap kind of just sitting in the valley. It was kind of strange. But I'm super glad I found the wiring issue, because that definitely could have been causing problems. I just wish I was able to measure the voltage drop on the wrong ground with the pump before I fixed everything. However, I didn't, unfortunately. Alright guys, so as far as the voltage drop test goes, the ground side is perfect, no problem. 63 millivolts is hardly anything. But the positive side at 0.63-ish volts, that's a little high. I was doing some research, and you really don't want to see it much above 0.5 volts for the voltage drop. Could be the relay contacts are a little bit dirty, and also Ford has those inertia switches that are down there, and that could be causing a little bit of high resistance as well. But I'm not sure if that's really high enough to be, you know, causing the problems that I'm having. And the fuel pump's like years old anyways, so I'm just gonna replace the pump and the filter. So after I do that, I'm gonna see if the fuel trims improve, and I guess we'll go from there. But even if they do improve, I kind of want to look into the voltage drop issue after that. But anyways, I'm going to show replacing the fuel pump and the filter in a separate video, and I will see you guys in a second after I replace it, and we'll continue this diagnostic video. So guys, I ended up making videos on pretty much everything I did, but I dropped the tank out after I removed most of the fuel, and I pulled the pump out, and it was pretty dirty. There's a lot of random stuff kind of just floating around in the tank and some sediment and everything. Also, the fuel pickup socks, that's kind of like a pre-filter, those were clogged up pretty good, and it just looked like the fuel pump was old and it needed to be replaced. So I'm glad I did it, especially because this van was sitting for a year and a half, and the fuel cap actually had gotten stolen, so could have got all kinds of like moisture in the tank and everything. I did clean out the tank really well with the Delphi cleaning kit, which is really important when you replace a pump. It also gives you a lifetime warranty through Delphi if you can prove that you did that. And I also replaced the fuel filter, of course, and put everything back together, filled it up with fuel, and I also put some Chevron injector cleaner in the tank as well. And of course, I fixed the wiring. But anyways, now it's running really good. I've driven it quite a lot. No check engine lights, but we're gonna go ahead and take a look at the fuel trims and see how much it's improved. All right, it's pretty much warmed up for the most part. And now we can take a look at our long-term fuel trims. And just at idle, they're looking pretty good. Pretty close to zero. Let's go ahead and give it a snap throttle. So it's not too bad. It goes up to about 5 and then kind of drops down a little bit. So right here, as the RPMs increase, we can see that little spike that goes up to about positive 6 or 7 fuel trim. And then right as we let off the gas, you can see it spikes way down, which is absolutely normal because momentarily the engine is basically under zero load, so it doesn't need any fuel and it's just taking it away, and then it just recovers right back up when there's some load on the engine. Do a pull and see what it looks like. It's just a little bit of throttle. It is going up a little bit, but nothing like it was before. Little pull here. Yeah, it definitely stayed under 10, if we can see that. It's definitely acceptable. However, it's not perfect. I would like to see those numbers be closer to 0. But anything below 12 is usually not too bad. Let's do another pull. You know, 8% positive fuel trim, so that's not bad. Before it was like over 20. This thing has a lot of torque. Not bad at all. I'm very happy with that. It's only around like 5 on that one. I also did put some fuel system cleaner in it, so that may have helped as well if the injectors were a little gummed up, because it had been sitting for so long, and I did drive it quite a bit, probably like 100 miles. Here we go up this hill. There's a shift. guys, I would definitely consider this van fixed. Those fuel trims are looking pretty good. Not perfect, but well within, you know, reason. It's definitely not going to set a check engine light or anything. The O2 sensors are doing their job and getting that, you know, good fuel to air ratio as much as possible. But anyways, I am going to replace the fuel pressure regulator a little later on. I'm going to do a lot of preventative maintenance to this van, and I got a Delphi one, so we'll see if that makes a difference. I'll probably make another video, and I will also probably check the fuel pump relay and do like a voltage drop test on that, and also the rollover cutoff switch, just to see if those are causing any issues. But anyways, guys, that'll be like a part 2. We'll just make this part 1 because I want to see if we can get that fuel trim even lower, closer to 0 on a pole, because that would be pretty sweet. But anyways, guys, I hope you found this video useful, and I will see you guys next time. Peace out. All right.